Hey everyone, today I'm going to be doing a couple of modifications to the Marvel Legends 6-inch White Queen Emma Frost from the SDCC Hellfire Club exclusive box set. Per usual, please like, share, comment, subscribe, or even hit that super thanks button. I do appreciate all engagement on my channel. So there are a couple of things about this figure that bugged me since its release. First time, of course, I don't like that hard plastic cape. It's also asymmetric in its sculpt, so it looks kind of weird draped to a side of the figure. It also falls over her shoulders, and the rigid sculpt limits the range of motion and how much you can pose her arms. It only really looks acceptable in the vanilla stance, and doesn't really get into good action poses. Next up, I also do not like her high heels on her feet. Now this is faithful to the character's comic book design, however the way that it's sculpted and engineered to the figure doesn't really give you a good range of ankle pivot. And these are also horrible for balancing the figure in different poses, so you can't really get her into wider action stances. The heavy rigid cape also makes this shortcoming of the heels even more obvious. So she's already rocking in my hands over here, and I'm pretty sure anyone who has this figure knows that she tends to do a lot of shelf dives because of the way the plastic flexes according to the weight of the figure and the cape. And next up, the figure also has very poor range in that forward torso bend. The ball joint gives you a great, ridiculous amount of range backwards, but going forward, she only gets just that much, which is quite disappointing. So first up, I'm gonna do a foot swap to give her a pair of feet that would sit flat on the floor. Now while this will detract from the character's design in the comics where she wears high heels, I really hate the high heel feet on Marvel Legends, because it makes the figures less stable and harder to pose. So over here I have a binary figure that I picked up on clearance, and it cost me less than 10 bucks. She's on the same base Marvel Legends body mold, so I'm gonna heat up Emma Frost over here and do a foot swap. So now I need to correct myself. After heating up both figures, I realized the pegs that go into their feet are not compatible, so it's not possible to switch out their feet. Instead, after heating the figures up, it's actually better to pop the pins at the knee joint and switch out the calves between both figures. So this is what Binary now looks like without her calves. And this is Emma's lower body with Binary's calves and feet. So as you can see over here, the lower body stands quite stable with those regular feet flat on the floor. But the true test is, of course, putting the figure all together later and seeing how it poses and stands. Next up, I want to jump into the torso mod to get more forward bend out of that mid-torso ball joint. I've already heated up Emma's upper torso and popped it off. Here's a closer look at the ball joint on the lower part of the torso. You can see that the socket is already quite wide. So I'm just gonna be removing a bit of plastic to the front of that ball joint. I've already marked it out over here. I hope you can see the pencil marks. Just that central channel over here marked out in pencil. So I use my own rotary grinding tool, or you can also use a Dremel with a spherical diamond bit, and I managed to grind out that much plastic from the front in the torso ball joint. So this should give her more forward range. Putting the torso back together now and just testing out how much extra forward bend she has, and it's definitely an improvement in my book. And finally, we're having a look at this cape that I picked up from Taobao. Now, if I can remember where I actually picked this up from, I'll post a link in the description below. Now, this cape is made from a white fabric. On the inside of the cape, it looks flat, but once you come out to the outside, it looks slightly more shiny and shimmery, so that's a nice effect. The material is also a little stretchy, as you can tell over here. And there's also good quality stitching that goes all the way down the hems and the sides of the cape. That stitching also helps to keep in place a poseable wire that goes all the way around from the top all the way to the bottom. And I also like how the poseable wire also goes into this furry insert at the top. So this means you can pose the cape nicely on Emma's shoulders and keep her warm with the fur on top. On the front of the cape, there are also two strings for you to tie to Emma. And they come a little long, so I'll have to clip them to size. So here she is with the knot tied in front of her fabric cape and placed over her shoulders. I'll admit the entire process of knotting those strings was a bit finicky, and I'm not sure I like the way the knot actually looks in front of the figure. But that's a subjective thing. There's actually a metal wire at the top of the cape, so if you want to do away with the knot, you could even have the option of hiding it under the fur and pulling that entire top part of the cape closer and just wrapping the fur around Emma's neck. So this way the cape sits nicely on her shoulders and also close to her neck. I like how the fur actually looks on the figure. It makes her look more glamorous. And the flowing fabric cape makes the figure also look more natural. So this is definitely an improvement on that hard, rigid and heavy cape. So now removing those high heels and getting her feet flat on the floor means that she can pull off much wider action stances and still remain stable standing up. The removing of plastic in the mid-torso joint also gives her more forward range so that her torso can likewise follow the deep stances in her legs and you get her to crunch forward more. And finally, with that poseable fabric cape, it just adds way much more drama into her poses. And for me, these three enhancements definitely boost this figure much more to the next level. And what's also really pleasing about this fabric cape is that now you can free up the full range of articulation in her shoulders and actually raise her arms, giving you much more options in posing the figure, especially since she uses a lot of her mental powers and sometimes channels them through her hands. Having a much better balance also means that you can put on some effect parts for her to use in different poses. So I'm really glad how this turned out, and I hope this gives you a couple of ideas to modify the Emma Frost action figure and get more enjoyment and posing out of this one. Please like and share this video, let me know what you think in the comments below, subscribe to my channel, or even hit the super thanks button. Thanks for watching, take care, and stay safe.